We're being joined by Idika Kalu Umar, who is an economist and MD and CEO of Gabs Financial Services Limited. He joins us in the studio. Good evening, and thanks for joining us on Newsnight.
Thank you. Good evening.
All right, let's talk about rebasing of our CPI. We've recently readjusted the way we calculate unemployment in the country. There's talks about expanding the net when you talk about out-of-school children in the country, and now we've rebased our CPI. I just wanted you to break it down for us. What does this mean? How is inflation now being calculated in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. Essentially, price is a very important macroeconomic variable, and we need to keep a tab on the movement of prices in the economy. For households, you need to gauge their utility. For firms, it determines their profitability. And for governments, of course, the revenue that accrues to government. And so it is important for both the monetary authorities and the fiscal authorities to know and gauge the movement of price so that it can help in policy formulation. So essentially what the CPI rebasing means is that it's a standard statistical practice. Most countries do it every 5 years, in which you have a new reference year that reflects current prices, and you try to monitor price changes so that current realities in the economy can be effectively tracked, because it helps in making policy decisions, whether it concerns the populace, whether it concerns any sector of the economy. It's good for you to know exactly trending prices. And what they do when you talk about the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is that there is weighting. There is weighting of the different divisions or categories. I think we have about 13 categories, okay, currently. So there are weights attached to their contributions to national income, to GDP, and also the currency of the year. So we've taken 2024 as our base year, okay, and so weights are attached. That is what you call rebasing. And so because you are introducing other economic activities into your basket, their contributions to national income, to GDP, will be certain. Okay, so that's what the NBS has tried to do, the National Bureau of Statistics. Okay, so the contributions they have made, or the weighting, is what is responsible for dropping the inflation from 34 to 24, okay? And many Nigerians will not agree with that drop, essentially because there's what we call disinflation. Disinflation is a deceleration of inflation, but that occurs when prices of goods and services are rising, but at a slower pace. Okay, what that means is that you still have an inflationary condition, but the speed of growth of that inflationary condition has reduced. And so, for instance, if your inflationary trend is at 30, and normally what you normally see, there's a jump to 35. Instead of getting to 35, it gets to 33. It has still increased, but at a slower rate.
Yes, Prof, for an average Nigerian, and I like that you've factored them in, because when you said Nigerians may not agree with the reality because you have something you have just explained as disinflation. For the average Nigerian, or for average Nigerians, they want to know how this affects them. Does this mean that the economy is improving, or we are just measuring the same old problems in a different way?
Okay. I think basically that question is right, because I say Nigerians have become statisticians. They know when prices will come down, okay? And so our inflationary figures should reflect that reality.
Does this capture the reality?
This does not capture that reality.
Okay.
It doesn't capture that reality because it's a quantum drop from 34.8 to 24.4%. Yeah, it's like when you say there is a deflationary situation. A deflationary situation is where there is a reversal, that prices of goods and services are really coming down, and it's reflected on a year-to-year basis on the consumer price index. But we don't have that kind of, it's just like when you devalued, or when devalued the naira, okay? And then you know what happened when you just by fear devalued the naira. So it does not reflect the realities, and that is why people are looking at it as an academic abstraction, because it's not in tune. If it had, because you've introduced other economic activities into your basket, okay, you look at the contributions of those economic activities. So there may be a marginal drop in inflation. If the figures had come to from 34 to 32 or 31, it's more agreeable. Food inflation is the core of the inflation basket. And so the weight there is very, very high. So even if you remove it, what about the other activities?
Earlier you were talking about how it helps policymakers.
Yes.
And if you say this does not reflect the reality on ground, how then will it help our policymakers to make policies that will help our economy?
Yeah, the other things you can glean, you can get from the rebasing, not just the drop in the inflationary figure. It helps you, for instance, look at structural changes in the economy. It helps you look at new economic activities in the economy. It helps you look at the size and structure of the economy. It also helps you look at fighting poverty and growing the economy. Also, there are a lot of things that policymakers can glean from it, okay? In fact, you have what we call the tax to GDP and debt to GDP ratio. It helps you, because if your tax to GDP ratio is reducing while your GDP figures are going up, it shows that you are not sufficiently collecting revenue when you match it with the production of goods and services. Also, when your debt to GDP ratio is reduced when GDP values are high, it means that you have lesser debt, which means you have a window to even go and borrow more. And that is what put us in problem. For policymakers, in 2024, when we rebased, you understand, Nigeria's GDP grew by 89%. And immediately, Nigeria became the biggest economy in Africa. The government officials looked at it and said, we have room to borrow. And today, we are 121 trillion.
And what about monetary policy?
Yep.
In light of this rebased CPI, Central Bank of Nigeria, tomorrow we're going to have MPC. What considerations should the Apex Bank be looking at when it comes to the adjustment of interest rates?
Now, we have always said that the Central Bank should change its strategy. And I've said it even in one of your programs here, that, hiking the interest rate is frustrating the productive sector of the economy, and I still stand by it. And maybe by tomorrow, they may have gotten tired of increasing. Maybe they may hold it, or maybe they may reduce it.
Fingers crossed. Wait to see. They said they're tired.
Exactly.
Hopefully they're not tired. They're doing their job. But Prof, let me ask you. I listened to another renowned economist such as you, Paul Alaje, who's also a regular on our broadcast station. He described this CPI rebasing as, in his words, a legitimate means by the government to boost the confidence in the economy. Do you agree with him? In other words, he was talking about investors' confidence. Say, investors are seeing this and watching to say, okay, we have seen the numbers, we have seen the methodology used, we have some confidence to go into the country to invest. Does this do that in your own opinion?
I don't think I'll align with him entirely. We need to be very truthful and realistic. Investors would also carry out surveys before they set up businesses in the local economy. And it would not be nice if your figures don't reflect realities on ground. You see, if you don't want it to be a cosmetic, a cosmetic issue, then government must seriously begin to do things to stabilize the naira, must begin to improve on FX inflows, must begin to, control supply side inflationary processes like excessive borrowing. These are the things that these are the things that inflate the economy.
So we argue with you, because even yesterday after this announcement, we saw the naira gain as well, and for a while we've seen it stabilize in the markets in 1,500, aligning with what we even have in the 2025 budget. But a lot of questions and skepticism has followed this. One last question before I let you go. You talked about the year. And I think the NBS, the statistician general of the country, explained in detail yesterday that this was just changing the year of reckoning, so to say, from 2009 to 2024.
Exactly.
But then the question is, why 2024? Why not perhaps 2023?
No, 2024 gives you the immediacy of prices, the currency of prices. You must be as objective as possible. 2024 prices are different from 2023 prices. So you rebase using
your
the
best
latest
year.
reference year, exactly, period.
Your best year.
Which is 2024.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Professor Idika Kalu-Umar is an economist and the MD CEO of GAPS Financial Services Limited. Thank you so much for joining us on the news tonight.
Thank you.